Jason Peters, a longtime veteran in the NFL, has signed with the Chicago Bears. This happened actually after I watched the game. It happened about 10 minutes after they signed him. And the reason why is their offensive tackle position, their three offensive tackles on that side have been all hurt, and they need a veteran presence. And Jason Peters is tremendous at his job, even though he's entering his, I believe it's his 18th or 19th season in the NFL. So it's been a long time, and he's very good at his job. It's hard to get past Jason Peters, okay? Talk about consistency. Now, the interesting thing is, when I talk about this, the Cowboys will have a big situation. They MRI'd Dak Prescott on Saturday. He had thrown a little bit, just to be sure, and it was clean at that point. They're again going to MRI him today on Monday. The question is it still going to be clean? If it is, he can start practice. Today he'll be on a limited basis, but the expectation is if it comes back clean and everything's good, he's going to come back and play against the Houston Texans on Saturday night. Neville Gallimore had left the game against the Cardinals and dislocated his elbow. At first it looked worse, but there was some structural damage, but it was minimal damage mostly. And he'll be out for about 4 to 6 weeks. So the big thing is, as the Cowboys' defensive tackle position so weak, we got to figure out who's going to be where. But also, it was best case scenario for this to happen, because at most people don't come back from those injuries, or it takes them a year to come back. It's going to take them 4 to 6 weeks to come back. So it was best case scenario. Now, I don't want to talk about this much, but I will talk about it because I think we need to talk about this. Skip Bayless, if I could explain how Skip Bayless makes everyone look horrible on the Cowboys. He says he's a Cowboys fan. That's the problem. That is the problem. So I'm going to put this down because I'm going to use my hands because I have to explain this. Skip Bayless basically fat-shamed Mike McCarthy on Undisputed. And I gotta give credit where credit's due. Jenny Taft, the co-host of that show, was like, no, you can't say that. That's not right. Because Skip Bayless said he's overweight, so he should not be a head coach. Because he's not a good leader. And that's why, if you're overweight, you can't be a good leader. It makes no sense. It doesn't make sense at all. There's no sense of it. And this was like the same incident we had last year. If you remember correctly, Skip Bayless said that Prescott, he doesn't want his starting quarterback to be depressed because it doesn't show he's a tough guy. I don't know how that makes sense to anyone, because we live in an age where we are trying to help those people who are depressed. Okay? We're trying to help people who are depressed to get them to feel good about themselves, to get them to feel all of these ways about themselves that make them happy. That's what we're trying to do. It's the same thing with people who are, I'll say, a little heavier. This is the best way I can do this. I'll say a little heavier. We try and help these people to make them feel good about themselves. When Skip Bayless goes on television and says, quote, he's a fat guy he can't be a head coach, and he's not a good leader. And the reason why he's not a good leader is because he's a fat guy. It makes no sense. And what makes it worse, there is no explanation for this. You have Shannon Sharpe across the table just kind of laughing at it. And then he goes and says, well, it was scripted. They're on Hard Knocks. Of course it's scripted. That's how it works. It's a show. It's a show. It doesn't... If it's not scripted to appease a somewhat audience who doesn't really watch football during the year, of course it's scripted. The Rex Ryan stuff, not saying that it was fully scripted, but it was mostly scripted. There was a lot of it that was scripted. And it was like, well, it's this, it's cliche, it's this, it's that. It's a scripted show. Get over it. It's not that hard to understand. It's a show. If you look at any show, they're scripted, they're edited, everything is done for that reason. And then you can say, well, the Cowboys have any reason. No. The Cowboys don't run the show. They don't. Hard Knocks is run by the NFL. The NFL runs it. That's the point. Specifically, NFL Films runs it. That's what I mean. But when you go and say, when Skip Bayless goes and says, well, he can't be a good leader because he's heavier. I mean, Fox ain't going to do anything. I know that. Fox is not going to do anything. Guarantee you, sometime within the future, they're going to have Skip apologize. If they haven't already. And if they do, send it to me. I want to see this. Because it makes no sense. So you're saying the reason you can't be a good coach is because you're on the heavier side. So you would have never, if Andy Reid was available, you would never hired Andy Reid because he's a heavier guy. If any coach is, because I don't think people understand how this works. These coaches are trying to do their job. And you have people on television saying, well, he's uninspiring. Doesn't matter. You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea. And let me explain something. The first Hard Knocks episode was great. It was. And I had heard about Mike McCarthy's idea from the Mojo Moments. The idea was that when the momentum, if there has to be a quick, sudden change, where we get an interception or they get an interception and they get down to the 20-yard line, we need to be ready to switch and go and be able to score and be able to do these things. That's what he meant by it. And you have Skip Bayless being like, well, I don't know what he's really talking about. Of course you don't. McCarthy's a head coach and you're not. There's a reason. And then you have Shannon Sharpe on the other side who's going, well, we would have never listened to it anyway. Whatever. It doesn't fit you because you are not in that situation. My father said this once, and I haven't really forgotten it at all. He said, every person has a way to solve your problem, but don't have a way to solve theirs. And I'm like, that's true. Say something happens. I get into a car accident. Person passes me. Before I get into a car accident and after I get into the car accident. But he doesn't see what happened. And he doesn't stop. It is his prerogative to stop, but he didn't stop because he couldn't see. People are like, well, why didn't you stop? I would have stopped. Yes, but you went there. You don't know what that situation is. If I was standing there trying to flag somebody down, he would have stopped, but he couldn't see me. That's the point I'm trying to make. You have to understand, if I could say whatever I want, he could say whatever he wants. Doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that I was there and you're not. I'm going to listen to the guy who's there. It's just the way it works. But for people to go and be like, well, Skip Bayless was right to say that. You're a horrible person. You are. Because that's not the way you should think. Now, maybe it's me having faith in humanity, but at this point, it makes no sense that we should be arguing because a guy is a little more. He's a little more heavier than someone else. Doesn't mean he's not a good leader. Just doesn't work that way. Moving on from that subject, Dion Lewis to retire as a Patriot, as he retired after. CBS kind of made it a little weird because it said 8 years and it said 10 years. It's 8 years. Just to say. Dak Prescott, as we said, was showing improvement. He did get an MRI on Saturday. It was clean. He's expected to play, but they want to just MRI it again. And to end with the Cowboys, Sean McEwen, their tight end, left the game because of an ankle sprain. But what do you guys think? What do you think of Skip Bayless' comments towards Coach Mike McCarthy? You decide.